Joe Rossi, the best coordinator that PJ Fleck has ever had. Is that the nicest thing anyone had to say about Michigan State during media days? We talked to Dalton Shetler about that and, hey, storylines about camp opening up. Let's go.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of Locked On Spartans is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to. But hey, this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day. All summer launches. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Spartan friends, Spartan family, thank you all so much for kicking off your day with us here at Locked On Spartans, your team in green and white. 5 days a week. That's right. We are less than 5 weeks until kickoff. It will be here before we know it. And actually, you know what it is right here, Dalton? Camp. It is starting today on this Tuesday. Storylines just everywhere. We're going to get into that in segments 2 and 3 because, sir, you are boots on the ground in Indianapolis, working your tail off for the Spartan Media Network over there. And you know what? I just found this tweet not too long ago. This is from Madeline Kenny over at the Detroit News. And it said, point blank, Joe Rossi was the best coordinator that PJ Fleck has ever worked with as a coordinator. PJ Fleck. And look, we throw barbs at PJ Fleck over here time and time again. But, fact of the matter is, this guy was a really good coach. Still is a solid coach. Let's not get it twisted, but had some really good moments at Western Michigan. He's coached alongside some great coaches. Joe Rossi being anointed as the best coordinator he's ever had. That's the best thing I heard from other people over Media Day. But you talk to a lot of other people from outside of East Lansing. Can you top that, Mr. Shetler?
That's about as high of a contender as I could find. The other piece I would tell you is in butting shoulders a little bit with some of the new Pac-12 schools that have made their way over and some of those media members. A lot of them had the same thing. It was very monotone what some of the media members had to say. Hey, Jonathan Smith, you're going to love him. And they all pointed back to Mark D'Antonio. They said he's got a little D'Antonio in him. Like from what we can tell, from what they know of Smith and what they are impressed by of D'Antonio, or his impression was from that time, that seemed to be the consensus from the newcomer schools, as they pointed to. So I would say the Joe Rossi bit was pretty good. We had like 5 minutes where we talked to PJ Fleck and we weren't able to quite get to that. He was really in a rush. But I would say that in what we just said there with Jonathan Smith and how much we're going to love him, I think those were the two best things you heard.
I feel like every single thing that's coming out of the West Coast, the guys that know Jonathan Smith, when they are talking about him, is just how great of a get Michigan State has gotten this offseason. And obviously us on this show, we co-signed that 100%. Like, I love the work he did at Oregon State. I think it's going to fit right into what he has to do at Michigan State. But man, it's almost like 100% batting average from anyone that's actually from the area over there. And just what a nice blanket of comfort that is to go into the season with, Dalton, right?
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. And I think what we've gotten to know, the little bit there is of Jonathan Smith in these months since he's been hired and before we get the season started, look, it's not necessarily a ton of flash. He's clocking in. He's handling business. It's very classy. Everything is of a certain cloth, a certain standard, but not necessarily in a pretentious way. I don't want that to sound like that's necessarily a too good or an arrogance or whatever. It's a very humble, grassroots feel that you get from him. And again, when we talk about Michigan State, and of course, I mean, here on this podcast, you have a ton of Michigan State fans and listeners. That's what Michigan State is. And that's what Michigan State needs to be kind of led by. This feels like a good marriage on that front before we even get to any ball games.
He's got like that blue collar Midwestern charm about him. And he's a kid from Cali. So I really know how that works, but hey, it seems to fit in right here so far. Look, we've heard him at the podium. We got a little bit of quotes from him from, the smaller media scrums that he had. Last week, I talked about, the best thing that he said at the podium was not letting adversity affect them. And he was talking more about the long-term prognosis of this program. But I even attributed that to just games. Like, we saw this team fold like a dollar store lawn chair at just the slightest bit of adversity many times last year and even a few times, the season before that. But nevertheless, a steady hand. He's shown it, just like he said, Dalton. He's all about the business. He's professional. That was my favorite takeaway from the podium. But when you got to sit down on him, have a little bit of a conversation, what takeaway do you think is going to put that twinkle in Michigan State's eyes?
it's still a lot of that same steady hand approach. And it's really interesting too, because everything is so calculated, so perspective driven.
Yeah.
I suppose maybe is the best way to put it. And again, I know we already used the word D'Antonio, but it reminds me a lot of it. And at
Mm,
one point, I had asked Jonathan Smith, "Hey, let's talk about your newcomers coming over. Aiden Childs from Oregon State, Jack Velling from Oregon State, Tanner Miller from Oregon State, all the Beavers that followed you to become Spartans." And
yeah.
he started with Childs, and he said, "Look, a lot of people are excited about him, and they should be. He's got a lot of talent. He earned reps at Oregon State, which was not easy to do with their quarterback DJ being there at the time." And he said, "But keep in mind, folks, he hasn't had a start yet. He
Yeah.
has one college start. So there's always a perspective with him in everything he does. And it's just that steady hand approach. And again, like we were talking about, is you're looking for a reestablishment of structure and foundation in building this program up. It's hard to draw something up better than the blueprint that he's currently working with.
Was it hard to crack him and try to, break through that poker face and see how he is truly feeling about this season? Because he's been pretty even keel, like, yep, you like what we see, but there's still a lot of work to do. Like, it is the most cliche coach speak of all time. And I'm sure there's some truth to it when he says it, but I just can't break through his face. But you were face to face with him. Are you able to like get any inkling of if he's feeling like a little hotter than he's letting on to believe about the season?
I wouldn't say so much. And
Okay.
honestly, that's A, it could be a little bit of just cards to the vest, to your point,
Yeah.
or B, I mean, to your other point that you said later on in that, I think there's a real authenticity of, look, we know where we're at, we know where we need to get to, and it's a process. I think everything is very process driven. As I mean, again, you talk about coaches and cliches, which they always exist, right? All these different
Yep.
coach talk, all these different sports cliches, but there can be a hint of truth to them. And I believe this is one of those situations where it's just about the process. It's so early on. It's about getting into camp. It's about starting to hit. It's about starting to learn and seeing where this team can end up by the time they kick off on August 30th.
100%. And you also had a trio of players, or Michigan State had a trio of players down there. It was Dillon Tatum, Nate Carter, Jack Velling. When talking with those guys, who was the most open book of the three? Not to make this gold, silver, bronze contest in Olympic season, but who gave you the most goods in your conversations with them?
Ooh, this might be a toss-up between Nate Carter and Dillon Tatum. Dillon
Okay.
Tatum is a personality. As he came walking by before he sat down with us, they were just in the back and they had to do a bit of college football 25 video game play with one another
Love
for
it.
some of the video stuff. Right? Yeah. No. Tell me about it, man. I'm already on
Yeah.
year 2. Michigan State wins in year 1. Believe it or not, it's
Let's
crazy.
go.
But Dillon Tatum came walking by the table and he said, "Man, tell me why I just threw a pick to myself playing the video game." So like
Wow.
he's got a fun personality. He's a good person to kind of interact with on this level. But Nate Carter is a really impressive young man. Obviously, he just got married this offseason.
Yeah.
When he talks about the upcoming year, and the year that was, there's so much poise and maturity from him that I think is pretty exemplary. I think it's kind of unique and extraordinary. I don't think there's too many people that have the head on his shoulders that he does, because look, Nate Carter started every single game last year.
Yeah.
He didn't sit out once. And in that backfield, he shouldered a heavy load. I mean, he took so many of the reps, so many of the carries, and it was all kind of on him. And he comes out of that, stays here at Michigan State despite the adversity that was last year, and he's chomping at the bit for another year. And the wisdom he portrays, that's a special young man. That I came away. I already was pretty impressed with him from talking with him some of the other previous instances, but
Mhm.
he's an impressive young man.
Yeah, we just talked about him actually last episode with Connor Muldowney, because we were talking about, hey, what are we most excited for this season? And I just said, like, I just want Nate Carter to smile this year, man. Like, because hey, the more he scores, the more we're smiling, Dalton. The more us State fans are having a good time. But guy, he's just such a nice kid. He's just a great human being that you just want to see him genuinely happy. And yeah, he put on the shoulder pads for every single game last year. And you talk about adversity. It was for everyone on that field, but especially as the running back last year, man, he took some beatings last year. We're still going to talk about a little bit about media days, but also, guys, the storylines of camp opening up here in a hot second. But Dalton, I'm so sorry I got to do this. Got to send you to the bench because I need to talk to people's ears off about FanDuel Sportsbook. It is America's #1 sportsbook in one of the most underrated time of year, I guess, or every 4 years. Guys, I love the Olympics, even if FanDuel wasn't in our lives. Like, it is so cool watching all these different sports, seeing people realize their dreams, the beauty of heartbreak in sports. But FanDuel cranks it up to another level. If you saw watching beach volleyball was fun beforehand, go ahead and fancy some future wagers on the women's side, the men's side. Any way you want to do it, you can parlay it like I did. I did it on a Brazilian duo for the men's, and I don't even remember their names. But hey, if they're in the gold medal match, I'll be tuning in and then tearing close over for the Team USA side. That's right, got them at plus 210. Go ahead, check out their Olympic hub over at FanDuel. And because, if you're not an Olympic person, well, you know that the sports are winding down. We are getting fewer games, and they're just not sporting like we want them to. But guys, FanDuel is letting us go whenever we want. All we got to do is open up the app and dream up any bets that we are in the mood for. And this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. It's FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Now let's drag him back on here. It is Dalton Shetler. If you listen to anything Michigan State related, you know this guy's voice. This man is everything Spartan Media Network. And you also talk with Jack Velling, too. And I assume you didn't just hit him with 15 questions of, hey, how was the move from Oregon State to Michigan State? But, that is the storyline with Jack. But aside from that, what did he have to offer up in his media availability for you guys?
Well, I thought the most interesting part of Jack came a little bit actually from his head coach, Jonathan Smith, when talking about bringing the offensive coordinator, Brian Lindgren, over from Oregon State with him to Michigan State, and then Jack Velling as well. And when I asked that question to Jonathan Smith about, hey, tell me about these three, Aiden Childs, Jack Velling, Tanner Miller. One of the things, and I'll get back to your Jack point, I'll do a roundabout, but he loved the idea of the relationship of Tanner Miller and Aiden Giles. He really liked the connectivity they already have. And so that was a big bonus to him. But when he talked about Jack Velling, I mean, really without even being led this way, he said he and the staff believe he has a chance to be maybe one of the best tight ends in the entire country. And if you take a look at what Jack Velling did last year, last year, he was second team All Pac-12. He set a school record for touchdowns by a tight end. He had 8 last year. That also tied him for the most by a tight end in the FBS in the regular season for last season. That was the same coaching staff and Jack Velling. It was Brian Lindgren as the OC. It was Jonathan Smith as the head coach. You bring that trio now over between Velling and those two coaches to Michigan State, and Jonathan Smith said, look, I think we can do that again. So I think Jack Velling is chomping at the bit when we talk with him a little bit about the way he gets used. Says, look, we want to give you a little bit of ground and pound. And then once that happens, we're going to alleviate it with a throw over the top. And he's going to be an integral part of being found in that passing game. I think that was one of the really interesting sound bites to come out of our talks was how much Jonathan Smith lit up about the production value he sees in Jack Velling and the way Jack Velling is anticipating that as well. I think that's going to be big. And look, it's been a while since the days of Josiah Price, right? We can use a little bit of that here in East Lansing where Jack Velling becomes that kind of guy for Michigan State.
We saw it in spurts, and that is the most literal use of the word spurts last year with Malik Carr. He showed greatness, and then we all know the story about that. But for consistent tight end play, it truly has been that long, it feels like, since the Josiah Price days. And it goes even further than just Velling because, this staff, they also transformed Luke Musgrave into, I believe, a second-round pick for the Green Bay Packers. So this isn't just yay, this tight end got hot in our system. They truly put emphasis on the tight ends, and that's also why, Dalton, over here, we have now actually upgraded the amount of stock that we hold. We have now 1,100 shares in Brennan Parachek stock, too. So it's not just be Jack Velling. It's going to be Brennan Parachek as well. You know what? I am shoveling all my liquid assets into Brennan Parachek right now. Will he be first team All Big Ten this year? No, probably not. But he is going to be an extraordinary complementary piece for this offense, I believe, if he is healthy. And let's transition into fall camp opening. That is right. Woo-hoo. You can start smelling the cinnamon whiskey on those parking lots over there in East Lansing. Football is coming in hot. When I look at the top storylines for what we have to come up in fall camp, Dalton, I got to go right to health. And of course, I just mentioned Brendan Parachek. He was held out of the spring game. Very mum on what that actually was, if it was serious, if it was just precautionary, whatever. But is he going to be on the field? Is he going to be in pads this fall? But even further than that, let's talk about guys that had some devastating injuries last year, like Stanton Ramel. Okay, true freshman last year, missed the whole year with a knee injury. Gavin Brocious, he also had a knee injury. Tiny Little Hopper, he saw his leg explode into 58 different pieces last year. And then Alex Van Sumeren, he had 2 serious leg injuries to start his career. So who is going to be on the field in practice? Is it going to be precautionary? To me, even before the position battles, I think this is important because, you do need depth on the offensive line. Stanton Ramel is going to give you that. Gavin Brocious is going to give you that. And also, too, defensive tackle, Alex Van Sumeren, that's going to be a big battle in the interior defensive line. Is he going to be a participant? Is he going to be anywhere close to 100%? So that's where I go first with biggest storyline. Dalton, what say you? Are you all about the injuries? Are you a nervous Nilly like I am, or do you have something else to offer the people?
Well, no, I think it's a really fair point. I think it's going to be a big part of what some of the stories that come out of this camp are going to be. And somebody else too, like a Darius Snow. I'm for that young man. I am so tired of him being hurt. Just not for us selfishly as fans. He's an easy guy to root for, and it would be nice to see him healthy and back out there this season. So no, and that's one of the things I got lost in all the adversity of last year is the injury bug that kept biting this team. But no, I think health is a big storyline for the fall camp. There's a couple other ones that come to mind. One, this one isn't the sexiest, but special teams.
Sure.
Look, in the return game could use a lot of improvement. But when we talk about the place kicking and we talk about the punting of Michigan State, Ryan Eckley back there punting him away. By Phil Steele's projections, he's number 1 in the Big Ten Conference. For place kicking, Jonathan Kim is second best, I believe. Phil Steele has it for place kickers in the Big Ten Conference. So you're looking at that combo. Michigan State could end up with maybe the best special teams, at least that combo in the entire conference. That's something to keep an eye on. Like I said, not the sexiest, but I think it still is a really important thing as we get into this camp. But something I'm going to steal actually and kind of pilfer from a friend is J.U. Colcrick. He was down at the Big Ten Media Days as well, covering things with us. And one of the things he kept talking about when we talk about Nate Carter and the load he shared last year, who else is going to step up and take some of those carries for Michigan State this year to help alleviate some of that pressure and the wear and tear on Nate Carter? That way he's more fresh throughout the season. He's not being bogged down with some of the different things. I think that's really interesting as we all kind of hyper fixate on Aiden Childs. We talk about like the Jack Velling. We, of course, know the offensive line has to be better than what it's been in years past.
Certainly.
And the receiving core is interesting to me as well because you bring back Montori Foster. Antonio Gates Jr. comes back. You have some pieces that but you have a lot of guys that kind of need to establish themselves. And watching that process early on will be interesting as well. Defensively, the secondary, when you look at Dillon Tatum, Malik Spencer, you kind of know your safeties, but those corners, Chance Rucker, some of them, like Michigan State's secondaries had a bad rap for a few years now, and improving that backside of the ball, I think is going to be big. I think we know the linebackers are strong. The defensive line is going to be interesting as well with Chris Bogle, Maverick Hansen, as you mentioned, Alex Van Sumeren. There's a lot of pieces there. So not to go position by position with you, but my point is in terms of storylines, I think you have big questions that maybe storylines that people aren't talking about enough. J.U. Colcrick's point about that running back room is going to be interesting, and I'm excited to see about the cornerback play. If that steps up to a certain degree, what that means for MSU.
More storylines coming. Of course, we're going to talk position battles, and this won't be the only time we talk position battles this fall. We'll be, just beating the brakes off of this, but we're going to touch on a few early battles to keep your eye on coming up here. But Don, I hate to do this again. I got to send you to the bench because I need to talk to people's ears off about Ibotta. That is right. Our good friends are back. Ibotta. It's summertime, which means it's barbecue season. Stock up on all your grilling favorites and earn cash back with every purchase when you use Ibotta. So you don't have to choose between burgers or hot dogs. Hey, guys, just get both because you are getting cash back. Now, Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys, so you can make sure that you're beating inflation no matter what you are purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns, sit down for this one, $256 per year. Average of $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, the flight you've been keeping an eye on, or a fancy dinner or two you have been craving. You can save on over 2,400 brands and shop at over 1,000 retailers with Ibotta, including your favorite grocery stores, Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. So join the over 50 million users who use Ibotta and earn cash back every time they shop. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, LOCKEDONCollege, when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play Store or the App Stores, and use code LOCKEDONCollege. Also, gang, Factor Foods, they are here to fire up your summer. The warm, sunny days they are calling. Feel up for them with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals in time for summer thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, protein, and keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you're going to have new flavors and dishes to explore. Crush your wellness goals this summer with dietitian approved meals and ingredients that you can trust. Keep the kitchen time to a minimum. Again, guys, Factor meals are made in just 2 minutes. That means Dalton could have fired up a meal in the time that I've had him sitting on the bench by the time this is over. That is what Factor does. So head to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Now let's drag it back on here for one more second because we got to talk position battles. Dalton, you want to start on the offensive or defensive side of the ball? We'll let the guest choose here.
Let's go defense.
Let's go defense. Why not? Because you know what? I think the biggest position battle is just that defensive line. And I'm kind of copping out here because that's two positions in one. The interior line and then, of course, who's going to be at the rush. The interior, you could assume that's Maverick Hansen, back for his 17th year of college football. Daquan Dowse, really strong transfer from Georgia Tech. But then behind him, like Big Worm Ben Roberts, is he, possibly going to be ready? What do we got out of Jalen Satchel, Ruquan Buckley, and just that we talked about last segment, Alex Van Sumeren? Is he 100%? What does his 100% look like? What does his 80% look like? Is he anywhere close? Because it's not just, that he's had some pain in his knee, but you're missing out on key development years in your first 2 years of college if you're Alex Van Sumeren. So tamper the expectations unless he wants to pleasantly surprise us. For the edge, you know what? Jalen Thompson, of course, but then you got Quindarius Dunnigan. Is that going to be a battle for the rush edge position? Because opposite side, you could assume Chris Bogle. But I don't know, what has more intrigue to you? Is it the interior battle or is it who's going to be that starting rush edge, Dalton?
I think, honestly, this one I feel kind of on the fence. But let me go edge because I do think the potential of Dunnigan transferring over from Middle Tennessee State, who you mentioned, that battle with him and Jalen Thompson. We saw Thompson in especially towards the back half of that year, we got to see him quite a bit. Impressed with his athleticism. I think he got some valuable experience. I think that one should be pretty interesting. You talked about Bogle. I think Bogle does get the start, at least as of now, as we speak at the end of July, to be that other edge rusher. I think that other one, though, of Dunnigan and Thompson should be really intriguing. The interior, you have to imagine Maverick Hansen, as you said, in his 17th year of college football coming back.
Yep.
You imagine he gets a spot. The rest around that I'm pretty fascinated with as well. But when you start to take a look, Matt, at this team, this was the case last year when we sat, and I think we had this chat probably just about a year ago today, and we were talking about the upcoming year. We said the front seven's the strength of this team. Yeah. It's not too different when we get ready for this upcoming year, when we get to the linebackers, which maybe we're heading to next.
You, sir, have looked in your crystal ball because we are going to the linebackers because is this the storyline? Is the middle linebacker position up for grabs as far as starters go? Now, look, I'll get in front of it and I'll say, I'm sure by the end of the game, the snap count will be pretty similar between Kyle Halladay and Jordan Turner. But is there possibly like a battle for that starting role? Obviously, we know Cal Haladay. He's been here just like Maverick Hansen. They came in together in 2006 or whatever year that was, 16 years. I can't do math at the top of my head right now, but you get the point. He's been here forever. He's been the starter forever, it seems like.
Yep.
Could that be in jeopardy with a strong player like Jordan Turner coming in from Wisconsin? Or like you just want to dump a bucket of cold water on me and say, calm down over there?
No, not necessarily, but I think you expand this room even beyond just those two, because Cal Haladay, to your point, comes back leading tackler last year, 91 tackles. We know he's rather, he has a certain archetype of stopping the run, and
Yes.
that's really the strength of his skill set. Jordan Turner coming over from Wisconsin is very exciting, but then you take a look too. I think Jordan Hall, like, I don't know if we're talking about him maybe being a starter over those, but my point is, I think you get to see him a lot this year, because what we saw in his freshman year coming out of IMG Academy, look, in a time where things were extremely turbulent with the football program, I talk about Nate Carter's poise and maturity. Jordan Hall was that last year. He was the one stepping in front of the media members, talking to them, really composed as a youngster. I think he's going to get a lot of reps this upcoming year. I think that's exciting. And then Wayne Matthews out of Old Dominion.
Yep.
And you sprinkle in Darius Snow's return. How healthy is he? How ready is he? Like, that's a solid linebacking core. That might be your strongest position group on the team right now.
There's certainly an argument to be made about that just from the starters. If I just had to, throw a guess out right now as camp starts, I'm going to guess weak side is going to be Wayne Matthews. That's more the coverage linebacker, as we've talked about ad nauseum this offseason. For a good reason. They needed a coverage linebacker. Cal Haladay, I think it's not for the start, and then strong side linebacker Jordan Hall. But yeah, like it's a deep room, just like you said. And even too, like, the young guys that they got, Marcellus Pulliam out of Miami, can he give you anything? Smudge Bridgman, we'll see who can give us some in an already stacked room. Or, hey, let's shout out Brady Pretzloff, the true freshman. I mean, he was an early enrollee. Let's see if he can give you anything. But let's take a trip over to the offensive side of the ball here, because there might not be a lot of position battles. I think the most interesting one, perhaps, is how does the wide receiver room shake out? Because you could see a world where, maybe it's not the traditional slot receiver that they throw out there in the first series with, oh my God, why am I blanking on his name right now? The stud, Nick Marsh. That's right. The guy that I've only said 500 times this offseason. You can see him on the field alongside Jerron Glover and Montori Foster. But when it's time to bring on that slot receiver, who is it? Is it going to be Isaiah Johnson? Is it going to be Alante Brown? That's where I think is the most intriguing position battle, is who is that starting slot receiver? The old experienced guy in Alante Brown, or the young gun redshirt freshman Isaiah Johnson? Is there a more intriguing battle out there for you on the offensive side of the ball?
I would say that is close to being the top, if not that running back room we talked about. After Nate Carter, does it become Tolis? Does it become the transfer that I'm blanking the name on as well?
K'Ron Lynch-Adams. I can give you that one. I can't give you Nick Marsh at the top of my head, but I can give you K'Ron Lynch-Adams today on this beautiful Monday. So there we go.
Thank you. Appreciate it. But no, I think that is an interesting run there for the backups to Nate Carter. But to your point with that receiver room, that's something when we talked about the receivers earlier on in this program, we didn't even mention Alante Brown. Brown has experience, had experience in Nebraska. It was a little up and down at times throughout last year, is fair to say. But if he settles in, he gets a little bit more comfortable. We saw him in action on that jet motion quite often last year. And if he's able to continue that, get a little bit more comfortable, maybe you mentioned he's a slot guy, and then you surround him with Montori Foster, you surround him with Nick Marsh, who's going to get playing time early on here. I think there's a lot of intriguing parts to that. I would say that ranks at the top.
I will never forget myself for blanking on Nick Marsh's name. Really quick. That's just completely and utterly inexcusable. So, it's bad. It's bad. So, no, as far as position groups and the offensive line goes, I think the starting five is pretty much set in stone for the O-line right there. Quarterback, I have a hard time believing that there is going to be a battle there. But hey, you know what? To tease a future episode this week, we actually talked with former North Dakota offensive coordinator Danny Freund about Tommy Schuster's game. So look forward to that later this week. That's a little teaser. But yeah, just because there's not a lot of position battles on the offense necessarily doesn't mean there's any lack of drama going on this camp. It's going to be exciting to watch. And God, Dalton, I'm just excited to flip to the new chapter of Michigan State football. I know I've said that many times, but with the start of fall camp, it truly seems like, hey, this is the sunrise over the east right now for Michigan State football. Let's open up a new chapter here, Dalton. Was that
Oh,
beautiful
I
enough?
think so too. Yeah, no, I think that was
Thanks.
poetic. And
I tried.
with this
Yeah.
rebirthing of it, I mean, think about it too. Back when Mark D'Antonio took over in 2007, you got to see those early years. I think are pretty underrated because how can you not love the 2013 through 15 run?
Of
How can you
course.
not love the 2010 Big Ten season? But those
Yeah.
early years and the moments that gave fans in rebuilding something special, maybe we're going to see the same thing here early on.
Love it. Stay tuned. I cannot wait for it. Really quick, I'm going to try to do this with guests I've on for this month. Now, this is only going to, count until I forget, which could be the next episode. So stay tuned for that one. Record prediction for Michigan State. Are you in the business of predictions? And if so, would you like to make one right now?
I'm not terribly in the business of predictions, but what I will say
Perfect.
is I think when you go through the schedule,
Okay.
and we did a pretty deep analysis of the schedule while we were down there at the Big Ten Football Media Days.
Sure.
Look, you get two of the Giants in the Big Ten Conference. You get Ohio State and Oregon both on there. Those are difficult games, no matter how you slice it. As you continue through, I mean, it is a tough first schedule, but I think if you're looking at a basement of maybe 5-7 is
Okay.
maybe being your basement and your ceiling being maybe 7-5 to 8-4, anywhere in that window, I think if you're landing at 6 wins in a bowl game, I've given the adversity we just went through, the roster overhaul, that would be a success in my mind heading into the year.
Give me to any bowl game this year. Can't be like this every year. I'll say it every time. I'm not going to be rooting for the Serve Pro or the Serve Right First Responders Bowl every year, but like this year, I can't be greedy after the last 2 seasons. So there you have it. Dalton, cannot thank you enough for your insight. It's always a great time chatting with you, my man. Cannot thank you enough. So, hey, enjoy the rest of the week out there. Anything you want to plug here before we let you go enjoy the rest of your week?
I'll just make sure you follow all the content and listen to all the game broadcasts. If you're out traveling around, mowing the yard, you got plans on Saturdays, make sure you tune in with us on the Spartan Media Network for all your coverage.
One of my favorite things to do driving away from Spartan Stadium after a game is just tune in on you guys. Like, it is always a great job. So Dalton, cannot thank you enough. And folks, you already know this. We're going to be back tomorrow. We're going to break down what was said at practice, all that good stuff. Any mailbag questions, by the way, lockonspartans@gmail.com. But hey, more importantly than all that, take care of yourself today. Love you all. Go Green.